Hello everyone, this is Seema, Assistant Professor in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering from CIT Mandia. Today I am going to start with the very second module in data communication. In that I am going to start with the very first chapter, that is digital to digital conversion. So as for now we have learned with data communication fundamentals, and we get to know that data is represented in two different forms, either in an analog form or in a digital form. Then we also get to know that the computer can only understand the binary language, that is it can be of a form either 0 or it can be in 1, and these zeros and ones will store the information in digital form. So we need to convert the data into digital form so that it can be easily understood by the computers. Yes, right. So basically in case of a data transmission or in case of a conversion of any data to a digital forms, we have a four different types of conversions. So they are digital to digital conversion, analog to digital conversion, again digital to analog, as well as an analog to analog conversion. So basically we have a four different types of a conversion. One is with respect to digital to digital conversion. One is digital to digital conversion. Another one is analog to digital conversion, and the third one is digital to analog conversion. The last one is analog to analog conversion. So these are the four different conversion method which we are predominantly used in case of a data transmission. So in today's session I am going to explain you about digital to digital conversion. So how to convert our data into a digital form. So in this session I am going to cover a concept called digital to digital conversion. So let's start with the very first chapter in case of a second module, that is digital to digital conversion. So as we already know that data can be either in an analog form or in case of a digital form. So we already know that the data can either be in the form of an analog or the data is also in the form of digital, right? So let us learn how we going to represent this digital data in the form of digital signal. So in this session we will going to learn about how this digital data is represented in the form of digital signals. So in this session we'll discuss about how we're going to represent the digital data in the form of digital signal. So let's start with this topic. So this digital to digital conversion, it involves converting a digital data into a digital signal. So as I said, it involves a representation of digital data into a digital signals. Basically, there are three different techniques which is used for this digital to digital conversion, and those techniques are line coding, block coding, and scrambling. So these are the three different techniques which is used predominantly in case of converting a digital data into a digital signal. So let's start with the line coding first. So line coding is one of a process which we are going to use in order to convert a digital data into a digital signal. So it is a one of the conversion technique which we are going to use in order to convert a digital data into a digital signals. So it converts a sequence of bits to a digital signal. So it says that it converts a sequence of bits to a digital signal. So what does it mean is, let us assume that your data, some data is there. So this data is in the form of, either it can be in the form of a text, or it can be in the form of numbers, or sometimes it can be in the form of audios, or sometimes it can be in the form of videos. And so all these data, whichever the form it is, either it in the form of text, videos, audios, or it will be in the form of images. So whatever the form it is, so all this data is stored in the form of sequence of bits. So all these are stored in the form of sequence of bits. So these data, whichever the form it is, without going to know about the form, with respect to that format, it will stores in the form of sequence of bits in a computer. So it eventually stores in the form of sequence of bits in the computer. So by using this line coding technique, it eventually converts this sequence of bits. It converts the sequence of bits into a digital signals. So if the data is in the form of either in the text, numbers, audios, videos, or it might be in the form of images. So all these data are stored in the form of sequence of bits in a computer. So by using this conversion technique called line encoding, this line encoding process will convert the sequence of bits to a digital signals. So line encoding converts a sequence of bits into a digital signals. So in order to have a communication process, or in order to send one data signals into a one in order to have a communication channel, we need two different things. One is a sender and another one is a receiver. So here also, in case of a line coding, we have a two different perspective in order to have a better communication channel, that is a sender and receiver. So at the sender side, the digital data has been encoded. So here whatever the data is, that is encoded by using an encryption or by using some encoded techniques. So these data are encoded into a digital signals. So on the receiver side, this digital data are recreated. So whatever the encoded data is sent to the receiver, at the receiver side, all the digital data are recreated by using a technique called decoding. So what they are doing in case of a sender side is they're using an encoded technique in order to start in order to convert the digital data into a digital signals. Whereas at a receiver, they recreated the digital data in order to get back into a digital signal by using a technique called decoding. So sender side, they're using an encoding technique, whereas the receiver side, they're using a decoding techniques. So let's see how this will eventually happens. So this figure will shows the line coding and how the decoding process is taken up. So here in this example, they will have two different entities called a sender and a receivers. So in order to have a better communication, we have a link. So we have a communication link through which a digital signal is converted into a digital data. So here the digital data is first encoded here. So by using an encoder, it will encode the digital data into a digital signals. Then this digital data is again recreated by using a decoder. So again, it will, by decoding it, it will again recreate the digital signal. So whatever the format, so the major thing is whatever the format of digital data is converted at a sender side, or whatever the form in which the sender is sending the digital data, at the same format only the receiver has to be received. See here the sender is sending 0101 101. So here also at the receiver side they are receiving 0101 101. So this is about the line coding process. So there are some major characteristics with respect to a line encoding. So let's going to learn with their characteristics. We have a 9 different characteristics called as signal elements versus data elements. What actually the difference between a signal element and a data element? How these going to represent in case of a digital signals or digital data? How the communication taken up in case of a signal element or in case of a data element? Then we have one more thing called as a data rate versus signal rate. So either we can represent it in case of a baud rate, or it can either we can represent in case of a pulse rate. Next we have a bandwidth. The last fourth one is baseline bandwidth. Moving on, we have a DC components, which is nothing but data communication components, followed by self-synchronization, followed by built-in error detection. So this is used to detect the errors. So next we have an immunity to noise as well as an interference. And at last we have a complexity. So let's discuss with each and every characteristics of line coding. The very first characteristics of line coding is signal element versus data elements. So we know that a data element is a very small entity or a very small unit which is used to represent a piece of information. This piece of information will always be in the form of a bit. So as I said, it is the smallest entity or it is the smallest element. Since it is the smallest, we can use a bit in order to represent this piece of information. So in order to represent the information for a data element, we use a bit. So next we have a data signal elements. So what actually a signal element? It's a shortest unit of digital signal. So when I take it in case of a time period, so this is a shortest time period element. This is a shortest unit, or this is a shortest time unit signal element. So in digital communication, a signal will carries a data element. So a signal element will carry a data element. So in case of a data communication, a signal will carry a data element. So in case of a data communication, or in case of a DC, this signal elements will eventually carries the data elements. The signal elements will carries the data elements. So in other words, the data elements are what we need to send and the signal elements are what we can send. So there is a difference between a data elements and a signal element. So what actually a data element is? The data elements are the thing what we need to send. So what is necessarily need to send, whereas the signal element is what we can send. So there's a differences between a data elements and the signal elements. So keep in your mind, data elements are what we need to send, whereas signal elements are what we can send. So this signal elements will eventually carries the data element. The signal elements will carries the data elements. So data elements are being carried, signal elements are the carriers. Since signal elements will carry the data elements, since as I said, signal element will carry the data element, this data elements are being carried by the signal elements. So these signal elements are called as the carriers. Since it carry the data element, it eventually called as a carriers. Since this signal element will carry the data element, it is called as a carriers. Since the data elements are being carried by the signal element, it is called as a carried. So this is the first major characteristics. So in order to have this data elements and a signal element, there is a ratio. So the ratio R is defined as a number of data elements which is carried by each signal element. So in order to know how many data elements are carried by a particular signal element, we use a ratio. So we are going to define a ratio. So ratio is defined as number of data elements carried by each and every signals. So here, in order to know the ratio, here in this first diagram, the ratio is R1. So why the ratio R is 1 in essence? Here we have a ratio called as a 1. Why? Because here one data element is one element per one signal element. Here one data element is carried for one signals. So the ratio is 1. So what actually a ratio is? Ratio is how many number of data elements are carried by a signal element. So here one signal element is carrying a one data element. So here the ratio is 1. Since a signal element will carry only one data element, the ratio R is defined as 1. So here one data element for two signal elements. So here we have a two signal element. That is, here we have a two signal element for one data element. So it is, the ratio is 1 divided by 2. So here one data element for two signal elements. So two signal element will eventually carries only one data element. So the representation of a ratio over a data element and a signal element is 1 by 2. So next we have here two data element for one signal element. So here two data element for one signal element. Here we have carrying a two data element called 1. So here only a one signal element will carry a two different data elements. So the ratio is 2. So the ratio is 2. So next here there's a three signal element. Here we have a three signal element, 1, 2 and 3. So here four data elements are there. So it is 4 by 3. So three signal elements will carry the four data elements. So four data elements per three signal elements. So this is the representation of data elements and signal elements. So this is a very important characteristics of line coding. So next we have a data rate versus signal rate. So data rate versus signal rate. So the data rate will defines the number of data elements, and it will be defined in terms of a bits, which is sent in 1 second. So the unit of the unit is bits per second. So the unit of data rate is bit per second, which is eventually written as BPS. Whereas the signal rate is number of signal element which is sent in 1 second, and the unit we are going to measure the signal rate is baud. So this data rate is also called as a bit rate. So sometimes the data rate is also called as a bit rate, and the signal rate is also called as a pulse rate or a modulation rate or a baud rate. So the data rate is called as a bit rate, where this signal rate is called as a pulse rate, modulation rate or a baud rate. So pulse rate, modulation rate, baud rate is similar to a signal rate. So the major goal of this, the major goal of usage of a data rate or a signal rate in case of a data communication is to increase the data rate while decreasing the signal rate. So in order to increase the data rate, we need to decrease the signal rate, or in the same way, by increasing the data rate, it eventually increases the speed of transmission. So by increasing the data rate, it eventually increases the speed of transmission. So that is why whenever we are going to increase the data rate, we need to decrease the signal rate. So the goal is to increase the data rate while decreasing the signal rate, through which we can achieve a increasing the data rate, eventually it increases the speed of transmission, and decreasing the signal rate, it eventually decreases the bandwidth. So we can formulate the relationship between a data rate and a signal rate as S is equals to N by R. So we have in order to have a formula for the relationship called S is equals to N by R, we have three different cases called worst case, best case and average case. So the worst case, how these three different cases are achieved is, when this worst case will happen, when we need a maximum signals. So when the maximum signals are needed at that particular point of time, this worst case is happening. So worst case is when we need the maximum signal rate. So the best case is when we need the minimum signal rate. So in order to achieve a maximum signal strength, or in order to achieve a maximum signal rate, we'll go with the worst case. So in order to achieve a minimum, then we go with the best case. So in data communication, we usually interested in the average case. So we always use a average signal rate. So we predominantly interested with average case. So the relationship between the data rate and the signal rate is formatted as S is equals to C into N into 1 by R, which is measured in terms of a baud rate. So where N is a data rate, where the data rate is measured in terms of a bits per second, and C is the case factor, which varies for each and every cases, where S is the number of signal elements per second. How many numbers of signal elements are transferred for each and every second is denoted by S, and R is the number of data elements which carried by a signal elements. So R is the ratio which defines the number of elements carried by the signal elements. So here we have a problem. So what the problem saying is, what the problem statement is, a signal is carrying a data in which one data element is encoded as one signal element. Here one signal element is carrying a one data element. So it says that one signal element it is eventually carrying a one data element. So the ratio of R is 1. So as they're giving, the ratio R is 1. Why 1 here is they are telling that one signal element is eventually carrying the one data element. So what is the definition of a ratio? A ratio is defined as the number of data elements carrying by a signal element. Here one data element is carried by a one signal element. So the value of R is 1. So the value of R is 1. So the continuation of a question is, if the bit rate is 100 kbps, what is the average value of baud rate if C is between 0 and 1? So they are giving a C fact. C varies from 0 and 1. So the C will eventually varies from 0 and 1. Since it is varies from two different factors, the C value of a C is 1 by 2. Since the range of a C is between 0 and 1, the value of C is 1 by 2. So by using a formula, we can find out the average value. So since they're giving a range of C as C is 0 and 1, the value of C is 1 by 2. We know that S is equals to C into N into 1 by R baud. So here the constant C is 1 by 2, and N, they are giving the N, that is the number of bits, as 100 kbps. I am converting the kilo in kbps to a normal wage, that is then 1, then the R value is 1. So it eventually measured in terms of a baud. So the by using mathematical calculation, we found that the S is 50 kbps, or we are representing in terms of a baud. So it is 50 k bauds. So this is how the problems will come. So based on the number of signal element and number of data elements, and based on the bit rate, or by using a constant factor called a C and the range of a C, by using the formula, we can substitute the values, whatever the values they are given. So by concatenating all the values by using the computation task, we will get the particular answers. So the next characteristics is bandwidth. So what actually a bandwidth says is, so the baud rate is not a bit rate. So baud rate is different from a bit rate. Here the baud rate will determines the required bandwidth. So whatever the bandwidth is required for a particular bandwidth is defined by this baud rate. So whatever the bandwidth is required for a particular digital signal is eventually explained by a baud rate. So the bandwidth is proportional to the baud rate. So bandwidth is eventually proportional to the signal rate or a baud rate. So how we are going to calculate the minimum bandwidth is B minimums, that is a bandwidth minimum, is equals to constant factor C into number of bits per second into 1 by ratio. So next, how we get to know the minimum data rate or a minimum bandwidth of a particular channel is N max is equals to 1 by the constant into bandwidth into ratio. So using these two formula, we're going to achieve the minimum and maximum bandwidth and data rate. So next we have a baseline wandering. So the next important characteristics is baseline wandering. So in data coding, in de-encoding of a particular data or in decoding of a data, a digital signal. So in decoding a digital signals, the receiver will calculate the running average of a received signal path. So it calculates the average running time of a signal path which is received by the receiver. So this average is called as a baseline. So this average is called as a baseline. So in order to calculate the average of a signal path, average of a received signal path, we use a term called as a baseline. So here the incoming signal path is evaluated against this baseline in order to determine the value of data element. So in order to know the value of a data element, we need to check with this baseline. So the incoming signal path is evaluated against this baseline. So in order to know the incoming signal path, first we need to know about the baseline. So here a long strings of zeros and ones. For example, we will have a long string called, it will have a zeros and ones. It's a series of zeros and ones, that is 0, 1, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, 0. So like this, it will have a long strings of zeros and ones. So this eventually causes a drift in a baseline. So what is the baseline? So baseline is the average of received signal path. So if that received signal path can cause a long strings of zeros and ones, so at that point of time, it causes a drift in a baseline. So this drift is called as a baseline wandering. Why it causes a drift? Because these long strings of zeros and ones will eventually makes the user to understand, it makes the user to feel difficulty, right? So if anything will have a long strings of zeros and ones, how will have a memorize of this? How will get to know about this, right? So it takes much amount of time in order to have a snap of it, right? So it may difficult for the user or it may difficult for the receiver in order to decode correctly. If I miss, if I miss two zeros here, so there is a loss of a bits, right? So since it will have a long strings of zeros and ones, it can cause us a drift in a baseline. So this drift in a baseline is also called as a baseline wandering. So this baseline wandering eventually makes the receiver feels difficulty in order to decode the encoded signals. Since it contains the long strings of zeros and ones, it makes the users or it makes the receiver to feel difficulty in order to decode the signal correctly or in order to achieve a greater accuracy. So this is baseline wandering. So a good line coding schemes need to prevent the baseline wandering. So all the line coding schemes may not require this baseline wandering. Why? Because as we know that the baseline wandering will eventually contain the long strings of zeros and ones, which causes some difficulties or which causes some failures. So in order to achieve a good line coding schemes, so those good line coding schemes will never go with this baseline wandering. So it eventually prevents the baseline wandering, which says that it doesn't contain any long strings of zeros and ones. It will always consume a little amount of a little string structure. So it will not contain any long strings of zeros and ones. So in order to have a good line coding schemes, those line coding schemes will always prevent the baseline wandering. So the next is DC components or data communication components. So when the voltage level in a digital signal is constant for a while, so for a particular moment of time, a voltage level is a constant across the digital signals. So at that particular span of time, when the voltage is constant, the spectrum creates a very low frequencies. So these frequencies around zeros is called as a direct current component. So this DC component is a direct current component. So what actually a direct current component is, sometimes the current will fluctuates, right? So all the time the current is not in the same flow. The voltage level is not in the same flow, right? So the voltage is not ranging in the same flow, right? So at some period of time the voltage level is constant. So this is constant for zeros, around zeros. So this frequency is this voltage level is constant for zeros. So at this fragment of time, the frequency of a voltage level around zero, the frequency of voltage level around zero is called as a direct current component. So it is called as a direct current component. So we know that the direct current is not given to a major purposes, right? So here the voltage with frequency around zero is called as a direct current component. So this direct current component will present some problems for a systems. That what are the problems is that they cannot pass the low frequencies or the systems that uses electrical coupling via transformers. So this direct current will cause some problems. So direct current will also give some challenges, or it will also have some faults. So direct current will have a higher voltages. So the whatever the system we are supposed to use, or whatever the system is used for any conversion purpose, or whatever the systems that we are currently used in our homes are not based on a direct current. So direct current is a not good. So direct current is not a given for any of the system, since it will have a n numbers of damages, or it will have n numbers of circuitry issues. So it cannot pass low frequencies. For example, telephone line. So telephone line will not pass the frequency level below 200 hertz. So it will not pass any frequencies below 200 hertz. So for these systems, a scheme with no direct current component is needed. So a scheme which will not use the direct current component is needed for this telephone line. So next we have is self-synchronization. So in order to have a correctly interpreted signals, so whatever the signals that is sent from the sender, it eventually correctly received by the receiver. So in order to have a this way, so in order to have a correctly received signals from the sender to our receivers, this synchronization is required. So to correctly interpret the signals received from the sender, the receiver's bits interval must correspond to the sender's bit interval. So whatever the interval at which the sender will send, so the receiver side also it eventually matches exactly to the sender bits interval. So the receiver bit interval will eventually matches with sender bit intervals. If the receiver clock is faster or slower, then the bit levels are not matched. So we know that, right? So if there is any fluctuations between a clock rate, or if there is any fluctuation between a signal rate with respect to sender side and the receiver side, at that part of the time, the bit intervals are not supposed to match. So there is some misinterrupt signals will occur. So there is a chances of occurring a misinterrupted signals or misinterrupted channels. So a self-synchronizing digital signals will include a timing information in the data which is being transmitted. So this self-synchronizing digital signals will including the timings information. So at which time, at which second a data is transmitted from a sender to a receiver, at which second of a time period it eventually received at a receiver, all the details will be there in case of a self-synchronizing digital signals. So this self-synchronizing signal will achieved by if there are any transitions in a signal, and it eventually alerts the receiver to the beginning, ending, and in the middle of a pulse. So when the sender is starts sending a signals to a receiver, at that point of time, the sender will give an alert message to a receiver. And when the sender will send the data, so if it is in the middle, so the signal is in the middle, so the transmission is in the middle state. At that point of time, the sender will eventually send again an alert message saying that the transmission is in the middle process. So the transmission is done in a half a way. So if it is an end, again it will send an alert message saying that I'll completed the transmission process. The entire signal has been transmitted. So likewise, the sender will send an alert message while transmitting a signals to a receiver. So this, if a receiver clock is out of synchronization, these points can reset the clock. So if there is any fluctuation between a clock signals with respect to sender and receiver, then by using the alert signals or by using the alert messages, we can reset the clock. So this is the effect of lack of synchronization. So if there is no self synchronization task, then it eventually falls with these condition. So this is the sender side, this is the sender and the receiver side. So in the sender side, it eventually sends a one at particular period of time. But in the same way, in the receiver side here, it receives two different signals called 1 and 1. So there is a differences between the digital signals which is sent from the sender and what is the receiver side is received. So these two are not matched. Here the mismatch will occur, right? And there is also a gap between some timing. There is also some gap between a timing. So again there is some mismatch occurs. So these problems are arise since there is no self-synchronization purpose. So by giving a self-synchronization purpose, by accompanying the self-synchronization purpose, we'll achieve this, we'll go with this, we can remove this effects. So we can remove this, all this failures are bugs. So the next is built-in error detection. So we all know that each and everything will have a built-in errors, right? So by using this, sometimes it is very desirable to have a built-in error detecting capability. Not all the systems will have a capability to detect a built-in errors. So detecting a built-in errors is a major task. So this will generate a code in order to detect some or all errors. So those systems which will have a built-in error detecting capability will create a code in order to detect some or all the errors which are occurred during the transmission period. So some encoding schemes will also have this capability. So by using in case of removing a built-in errors, we always go with an encoding schemes. Since the major encoding schemes will go with this, major encoding schemes will have a factor of removing will have a capability to overcome with the errors. So we always prefer those things. So the next concept here is complexity. So what actually the complexity which is arise. So the complex scheme is more costly to implement than a simple one. So a simple scheme or a simple digital signals will eventually made more easily, and it is not much more expensive when compared to complex scheme. Whereas the complex scheme is more expensive, which means it requires a more cost, since it requires a more expensive for implementation purpose. So it takes much more cost for implementation purpose. Let's take an example of implementing a complex scheme. How this complexity will arise by implementing a complex scheme. So a scheme is there which uses a 4 signals level, and it feels a more difficult to interpret than one that uses only 2 different levels. So it's 4 signal levels. So for assume that there is a user will uses a 4 signal levels who is maintaining a 4 different signal levels, and again consider maintaining a 2 different signals level. So maintaining the 2 signal level is easy when compared to maintaining a 4 signals level. So here the implementation cost, or if there is any mischief occurs, then again recombining or reconfiguring it will also takes much more time. So complex scheme is more costly to implement than a simple one. So next is immunity to noise and interference. So this is another desirable characteristics of line encoding schemes. So which is very immune to the noise, and another is interference. So this line encoding is immune to the noise channels, and it also have an interference or interference. So next we have a different line coding schemes. In case of a line coding, we have 5 different categories. So line coding schemes can be broadly classified into 5 different categories. That is unipolar, polar, bipolar, multi-level, and multi-transitions. Here there is a pictorial representation of 5 different categories of line coding schemes with their different levels. So let's discuss with each and every schemes of line codings. First, we'll start with unipolar line coding schemes. So in this line coding scheme, in this unipolar scheme, all the signal level are one side of the time axis. So all the signals levels are on one time of a signal axis. So one time of a time axis is nothing but these signal levels will either above the time axis or it's sometimes below the time axis. So in a line coding scheme of with respect to an unipolar, all the signals level are on one side. So one side in a sense, one side of a time axis in a sense, it can either be an above the time axis or it can either be a below the time axis. So basically, unipolar scheme was desired as a NRZ unipolar scheme, where NRZ is a non-return to zero scheme, where here non-return to zero scheme is designed in such a way that positive voltage here will define bit 1, and the zero voltage will define by a bit 0. If I say 1, then it is a positive voltage. If I say we have a value called 1, then it eventually says that it is a positive. So if I say 0, then it is a negative. So if I say it's a 0, then it is a negative. So 0 voltage defined by bit 0, and then positive voltage will defined by a bit 1. So the negative is defined by 0 and the positive is defined by bit 1 in case of a NRZ. NRZ is nothing but non-return to 0. So the unipolar scheme will make use of only one voltage level. We call it as a non-return to 0. Why? Because the signal doesn't return to 0 in the middle. So it doesn't return to 0 in the middle of a bit. See, observe here. Here we have an unipolar NRZ scheme. So here this coding scheme is very inexpensive and it is simple to implement. So here in this example, the signal doesn't return to 0 anywhere in the middle of a time axis, right? and here we are going to calculate a normalized power by using 1 by V square, that is voltage at positive, that is 1, and here at negative, here we have a negative, so here 0 square. So again it is given as 1 by 2 V square plus 1 by 2 0 square. So it is 1 by 2 V square, since this 0 is getting 0, will eventually come with 0 values. So this is NRZ. So the second is polar scheme. So polar line coding. So in this line coding scheme, the voltage are on both sides of the time axis. So either it can, it can on both sides. So it is on above the time axis, and sometimes it is below the time axis. So for example, take a voltage level 0. It can be a positive, and the voltage level 1 can be a negative. So here the polar, we have an NRZ. Again we have an NRZ, that is non-return to 0 voltage. So here NRZ encoding, we make use of two different versions or two levels of voltage amplitude. So in order to use the two different levels of voltage amplitude, we go with two different versions of polar NRZ, that is NRZL, that is NRZ level. So in this case, NRZ level, the level of voltage will determine the value of a bit. So the level of voltage will determine the value of a bit. Thus, the level of a signal will depend on a value of a bit. Since the level of a bit here, since the level of a voltage will define the level of a bit, so the level of a signal is also depends on a level of a bit. So the level of a signal is eventually depends on a level of a value of a bit. So the next type is